The stagecoach lurched to a violent stop, sending Wendy Foster's already nervous stomach into her throat as she pressed her gloved hand against the dusty window and peered out at what would be her new home in Empire City, Colorado Territory, in this year of 1878. The main street stretched before her like a ribbon of packed dirt lined with weathered wooden buildings, their paint peeling under the relentless mountain sun. Cowboys tied their horses to hitching posts while women in calico dresses hurried past with their marketing baskets. Somewhere in this rough settlement was the man she had agreed to marry, a stranger who had written 3 carefully worded letters that promised her a home, security, and perhaps eventually something more. But as Wendy smoothed down her second-best traveling dress, the one she had mended 3 times to hide the worn patches, she wondered if Zachary Stone would take one look at her and realize he had made a terrible mistake. She was not beautiful like her sister Margaret had been. Her hair was an ordinary brown that would not hold a curl no matter how she tried. Her figure was too thin from years of making do with too little food after their parents died. She had no dowry, no prospects, and at 22 years old she had been facing a future as permanent help in her aunt's boarding house in Philadelphia. When she had seen Zachary's advertisement in the newspaper, something desperate and hopeful had stirred in her chest. A rancher in Colorado Territory seeking a wife who was honest, hardworking, and willing to build a life in the West. He had not asked for beauty or refinement or a substantial dowry, just honesty and a willingness to work. But now, standing on the threshold of actually meeting him, all her inadequacies pressed down on her like physical weights. The driver opened the door and offered his hand to help her down. "Welcome to Empire City, miss. First time in Colorado Territory." "Yes," Wendy managed, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. She accepted his assistance and stepped down onto the wooden boardwalk, immediately feeling the difference in the air. It was thinner here, harder to breathe, and the sun seemed closer somehow. "You waiting for someone?" The driver began unloading her single battered trunk from the back of the coach. "I am meeting someone, yes. A Mr. Zachary Stone. Do you happen to know where I might find him?" The driver's weathered face broke into a grin. "Everyone knows Zach Stone. Got himself a spread about 5 miles north of town. Good man. Fair dealer, you family of his." Heat crept up Wendy's neck. "Not exactly. I am his intended." "Well, I'll be. Heard he had sent off for a bride but did not know she was arriving today. He is probably at the general store getting supplies. Comes into town most Thursdays." The driver tipped his hat. "Congratulations, miss. You are getting yourself a fine man." Wendy nodded, unable to form words around the knot in her throat. The driver hauled her trunk to the edge of the boardwalk and climbed back up to his seat, leaving her standing alone with her meager possessions and her racing heart. She did not have to wait long. A tall figure emerged from a building marked General Store and Post Office, carrying a heavy sack over one shoulder. He was broad across the chest and shoulders, with dark hair that touched his collar beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin, and Wendy felt her inadequacy multiply tenfold. This was a man who looked like he belonged in this wild, beautiful place. What would he want with a pale, thin girl from Philadelphia who had never done a day's ranch work in her life? He spotted her almost immediately, and even from this distance, she could see him go still. Then he set down the sack on the nearest hitching post and walked toward her, his long legs covering the distance quickly. "Miss Foster." His voice was deeper than she had expected, rough around the edges like the landscape. "Mr. Stone." She attempted a curtsy, which felt ridiculous on a dusty Colorado street, but her aunt had drilled manners into her until they were second nature. He stopped a respectful distance away, and she got her first real look at him. He was older than she had imagined, perhaps 30 or 31, with lines around his eyes that spoke of years squinting into the sun. His face was angular and tanned, his jaw covered in a day's worth of dark stubble. But his eyes, a startling gray blue, held a gentleness that made something in her chest ease just slightly. "I apologize for not meeting you at the coach. I did not realize you were arriving today." He pulled off his hat and turned it in his hands, and she realized with surprise that he was nervous too. "I thought you were coming next week. The letter I sent must not have reached you in time. I am sorry to surprise you." "No, it is a good surprise." His eyes traveled over her face, down to her worn dress and scuffed boots, and Wendy braced herself for disappointment. But when he met her gaze again, he was smiling. "You are even prettier than your photograph suggested." Wendy blinked. The photograph she had sent had been taken 3 years ago when her parents were still alive, when she had been healthier and happier. "I fear that photograph was quite flattering. I am not very pretty at all, Mr. Stone. I should not want you to think I misrepresented myself." His smile faded into something more serious. "Did my letters misrepresent me? No, of course not. Then why would you think yours did?" He gestured to her trunk. "Let me get your things loaded onto the wagon and we can talk more on the way to the ranch. Unless you would prefer to stay in town tonight, Mrs. Henderson runs a respectable boarding house. I do not want you to feel rushed. I have traveled for 3 weeks, Mr. Stone. I think another night of delay would only make me more nervous." His expression softened. "Then let us get you home." The word home settled over her like a blanket, warm and terrifying at once. Zachary loaded her trunk into the back of a sturdy wagon with practiced ease. He helped her up onto the seat with a gentle hand on her elbow, his touch brief and proper. Then he retrieved his supplies from the hitching post and climbed up beside her, taking the reins with capable hands. As they rolled out of town, heading north on a road that quickly became little more than 2 parallel ruts in the grass, Wendy tried to gather her courage. She had questions, so many questions, but she did not know where to begin. Zachary spoke first. "I imagine you have concerns about the arrangement. I trust you are a man of your word based on your letters." "I am, but that does not mean you do not have the right to be uncertain." He guided the horses around a deep rut. "The ranch is not fancy. It is a working cattle operation. I have about 300 head right now, and I am hoping to double that in the next few years. I have a foreman named Miguel Rodriguez who has been with me since I started. Good man, married with 3 children. They live in a cabin on the eastern edge of the property. There is also a younger hand named Tommy who helps during the busy seasons." Wendy listened, trying to picture this life he was describing. "The house is small," Zachary continued. 2 bedrooms, a main room that serves as kitchen and sitting area, and a washroom I added last year. It is not what you are probably used to in Philadelphia. Mr. Stone, I lived in my aunt's boarding house where I shared an attic room with 2 other girls. Before that, after my parents died, I worked as a seamstress in a shop where we slept on pallets behind the curtain. I am not accustomed to luxury." He glanced at her, something like surprise crossing his features. "Your letters mentioned you were orphaned, but I did not realize the circumstances were so difficult. I am sorry." "There is no need for apology. You did not cause my misfortune." She folded her hands in her lap, trying to still their trembling. "I should be honest with you about my limitations, Mr. Stone. I can cook, though nothing fancy. I can sew well enough. I can clean and manage a household. But I know nothing of ranching or animals beyond the cart horses I saw in the city. I have never ridden a horse. I have never fired a gun." I do not know the first thing about this territory or how to survive in it. Then I will teach you." The simple certainty in his voice made her throat tight. What if I cannot learn? What if I am not suited to this life? He was quiet for a moment, and she watched his profile as he guided the horses along the rutted track. The mountains rose in the distance, purple and magnificent against the endless sky. "Miss Foster, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you answer my advertisement?" "You are a young woman with skills. You could have found work, perhaps eventually married someone in Philadelphia. Why come all this way to marry a stranger?" Wendy considered deflecting, giving him some pleasant half-truth. But he had asked for honesty, and honesty was the one thing she could offer. "Because I was tired of being afraid. Afraid I would never have a home of my own. Afraid I would spend my whole life serving other people and never matter to anyone. Your letters spoke of building something, creating a life. That called to something in me. Perhaps it was foolish." "It was not foolish." His voice was rough with emotion. "It was brave. And to answer your question, I think you will learn just fine. You traveled 3 weeks across the country to start a new life with a stranger. That takes more courage than most people have." They rode in silence for a while, and Wendy began to notice the details of the landscape. The grass rippled like water in the breeze. Wildflowers dotted the hillsides in patches of yellow and purple. A hawk circled overhead, riding the currents with effortless grace. It was beautiful in a way she had not expected, vast and open and alive. "What made you send for a bride?" she asked finally. Emboldened by his earlier candor, Zachary shifted on the seat. "Practical reasons, mostly. A ranch this size needs a partner, not just a hand. Someone to help build a future, but also—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "I was tired of being alone. I built this place from nothing, and it is satisfying work, but at the end of the day, there is nobody to share it with. I am 31 years old, and I want a family. Children eventually, God willing. A wife who is a true partner. And you think I could be that person?" The question came out smaller than she intended. He looked at her fully then, those gray-blue eyes direct and honest. "I think you could be exactly that person, Miss Foster. If you are willing to try." The ranch appeared over a rise, and Wendy caught her breath. It was not grand, just as Zachary had warned, but it was more solid and real than she had imagined. The house was built of weathered wood with a covered porch across the front. A barn stood nearby, larger than the house, with a corral beside it where several horses grazed. Beyond that, she could see cattle dotting the hillsides. Smoke rose from the chimney of a smaller cabin in the distance, probably the one where Miguel and his family lived. "It is not much," Zachary said, a note of uncertainty in his voice for the first time. "It is wonderful," Wendy said, and meant it. This was a real place, a working place, and it made her aunt's cramped boarding house seem even more suffocating in memory. Zachary brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house and jumped down, then came around to help her. His hands on her waist as he lifted her down were strong and warm, and Wendy felt her face heat at the contact. He set her carefully on the ground and stepped back immediately, respecting her space. "Let me show you inside." The house was simple but clean, exactly as he had described. The main room held a cast iron stove, a sturdy table with 4 chairs and 2 armchairs near the fireplace. Colorful woven rugs covered the plank floor. The bedroom he showed her was small, with a bed covered in a beautiful quilt and a washstand in the corner. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dancing dust motes. "This is your room," Zachary said from the doorway. "I will take the other one. I want you to feel comfortable and safe here, Miss Foster. We will marry as soon as you are ready, but there is no rush. You can take your time getting used to the place and to me." Wendy turned to face him. He filled the doorway with his height and breadth, but something about his expression was almost boyish in its hopefulness. "You have been more than kind, Mr. Stone, more than I expected. Zachary, please call me Zachary. Only if you call me Wendy." He smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and more approachable. "Wendy it is then." Over the next few days, Wendy began to find her rhythm in this new life. Zachary was patient, showing her around the ranch, introducing her to Miguel and his warm, welcoming wife Rosa, who insisted on bringing over fresh tortillas and teaching Wendy how to make them properly. The three Rodriguez children, ranging from 5 to 12, were shy at first but soon warmed to her. Zachary had been right about the teaching. He showed her how to gather eggs from the chickens without getting pecked, how to pump water from the well, how to recognize the signs of changing weather in the mountains. He taught her to ride on a gentle mare named Daisy, walking beside her for hours until she felt steady enough to try a trot. But despite his kindness, despite the growing comfort between them, Wendy could not shake the feeling that she was not enough. She burned the first 3 dinners she attempted, ruining good food they could not afford to waste. She tore a shirt beyond repair while trying to mend it. When Zachary took her to meet the cattle, she was terrified of the massive animals and could not hide it. On the 5th night, after she had oversalted the stew so badly it was barely edible, Wendy sat at the table with tears streaming down her face while Zachary ate his portion without complaint. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am trying, truly I am, but everything I do turns out wrong. You should have found someone more capable, someone who actually knew how to be a rancher's wife." Zachary set down his spoon and reached across the table to cover her hand with his. "Wendy, look at me." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I do not need you to be perfect. I need you to be willing. That is all. You are learning more in 5 days than most people learn in a month. The salt in the stew does not matter. What matters is that you tried. But you work so hard all day, and you deserve to come home to a proper meal, to a wife who can take care of things. I have eaten my own terrible cooking for 3 years. Believe me, even your oversalted stew is better than anything I ever made." He squeezed her hand gently. "You are being too hard on yourself. You are doing fine, more than fine." "I am afraid you will regret choosing me," she admitted in a small voice. His expression shifted to something fierce and tender at once. "I could never regret choosing you. In 5 days, you have made this house feel like a home. You have brought light and warmth to a place that was just boards and nails before. When I come in from the range and see you here, see you trying so hard, caring so much, it makes everything worthwhile. Truly, truly." He stood and came around the table, pulling her gently to her feet. "Wendy Foster, I know we barely know each other. I know this is all strange and new, but I want you to understand something. You are not here on trial. You are not some employee I am evaluating. You are here because I want to build a life with you. The real you, flaws and burnt dinners and all." Standing this close to him, Wendy could smell leather and sage and something distinctly him. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I want that too. I want to be a good wife to you, Zachary. I just fear I do not know how. Then we will figure it out together." He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "I have a confession to make. I am not very good at this either. I have never been married before. I have never courted anyone properly. I am probably making 100 mistakes without realizing it." The admission surprised a laugh out of her. "You have been nothing but kind and patient. That is easy when the woman in question is you." His voice had dropped lower, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. "Zachary, we should get married," he said suddenly. "Properly, I mean. Whenever you are ready. I know we agreed to wait, but having you here, getting to know you, it is only making me more certain. You are everything I want, Wendy. Everything I did not even know I was looking for. Her heart felt too large for her chest. I am ready now. I have been ready since I got off that stagecoach and saw you waiting. I was just too afraid you would realize I was not good enough. You are more than good enough. He cupped her face in both hands, and Wendy let herself lean into the touch. You are perfect for me. You understand that. Not perfect in general, because neither of us is that, but perfect for me specifically. I think I am beginning to understand. She covered his hands with hers. You are perfect for me too. I did not dare to hope for someone like you, someone kind and patient and good. Then say yes. Marry me. Not because of some arrangement or advertisement, but because you want to, because you choose this. Yes, Wendy whispered. Yes, I choose this. I choose you. Zachary leaned down slowly, his intentions clear, giving her every chance to turn away. But Wendy rose on her toes to meet him, and when their lips touched, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle and searching, a question and an answer all at once. His arms came around her, strong and secure, and she melted into him, letting herself be held, letting herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she really could be enough. They were married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Empire City. Rosa stood up with Wendy while Miguel stood with Zachary. The minister was an elderly man with kind eyes who seemed genuinely happy to join them together. Wendy wore the best dress she owned, freshly cleaned and mended, with wildflowers in her hair that Zachary had picked that morning. When Zachary slipped a simple gold band on her finger and promised to love and cherish her all his days, Wendy felt something fundamental shift inside her. She was no longer alone. She was no longer unwanted or unnecessary. She was Wendy Stone, wife to a good man, and she finally had a place in the world that was truly hers. The wedding night was gentle and awkward and sweet. Zachary was patient, leading her through the unfamiliar intimacy with care and tenderness. Afterward, lying wrapped in his arms in the darkness, Wendy felt tears slip down her cheeks. "What is wrong?" Zachary asked immediately, concern threading through his voice. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right, and it scares me a little. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for this to be taken away." He tightened his arms around her. "I cannot promise that life will not be hard sometimes. This is rough country and ranching is uncertain work, but I can promise that I will not leave you. I will not give up on you. You are my wife now, Wendy, my partner. We face whatever comes together." She turned in his arms to kiss him. "Together," she agreed. The weeks that followed brought both challenges and joys. Wendy slowly improved at cooking with Rosa's patient instruction. She learned to make bread that did not come out like bricks, to preserve vegetables for winter, to smoke meat properly. She became more confident on horseback, venturing further from the ranch house with each ride. Zachary taught her to shoot a rifle, standing behind her to guide her aim, his arms bracketing hers. "Why do I need to know this?" she asked after missing the target for the 5th time. "Because I am not always going to be close to the house. If something happens, a predator or worse, I need to know you can protect yourself." He adjusted her grip slightly. "Try again. Breathe out slowly and squeeze the trigger, do not pull it." This time she hit the edge of the target, and Zachary's whoop of celebration made her laugh. "There you go. I knew you could do it." She turned to beam at him, and the look on his face made her breath catch. He was staring at her with such open admiration and affection that it stole her words. "What?" she asked softly. "You are amazing, you know that. You just keep trying, keep learning, keep pushing yourself. I am in awe of you, Wendy Stone. I am only doing what needs to be done. No, you are doing far more than that." He took the rifle from her and set it aside, then pulled her into his arms. You are building a life here, making this place ours. Every day I wake up and thank God you answered my advertisement." Wendy buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him. "I think about what my life would be if I had not. Still in Philadelphia, still serving other people, still so alone." "This is better than anything I imagined, Zachary. Even the hard parts are better because we are facing them together." He tilted her chin up and kissed her thoroughly, and by the time they broke apart, her knees were weak. "Come on," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Let us get back to the house before I forget I am supposed to be teaching you to shoot." She laughed, feeling bold and beautiful and wanted, and hand in hand they walked back toward the house they were making into a home. But as summer faded into fall, new challenges emerged. A drought settled over the territory, drying up the smaller creeks and forcing Zachary to move the cattle to higher ground where water still flowed. He was gone from dawn until well past dark most days, coming home exhausted and worried. The strain showed in the lines around his eyes and the tension in his shoulders. Wendy did what she could, managing the household, helping Rosa with the vegetable garden, learning to do small repairs around the barn. But she felt helpless in the face of the larger problem. The cattle were thinner. The grass was turning brown, and Zachary's worry grew with each passing day. One night, he came home later than usual, and Wendy could tell immediately that something was badly wrong. His face was drawn, his movements stiff. "What happened?" she asked, meeting him at the door. "Lost 4 head today. Found them down by what is left of Copper Creek. Looks like they tried to reach water and just gave out." He sank into a chair, and Wendy saw defeat in the slump of his shoulders. "If this drought does not break, I am going to lose a significant portion of the herd." "That is a year's income, Wendy, maybe more." She knelt beside his chair, taking his hands in hers. "What can we do?" "I do not know. I have moved them as far north as I can without crossing onto government land. The creek up there is still running, but barely. If it dries up too, I will have to start selling them off before they all die." He met her eyes, and she saw fear there. "I am scared I am going to lose everything, that I brought you out here with promises of a future, and I cannot deliver on them. Zachary Stone, you listen to me." Wendy cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "I did not marry you for your cattle or your ranch. I married you because I love you. If we lose every single cow, we will figure something out. We will find another way. But you are not going to lose everything because you still have me, and I am not going anywhere." "I love you too," he said, the words rough with emotion. "God, Wendy, I love you so much. I should have said it before now. You show me every day, but it is nice to hear." She kissed him softly. "We are going to get through this. I do not know how yet, but we will." He pulled her into his lap, holding her tight. "How did I get so lucky?" "I think we both got lucky when we found each other." The drought continued through October, but Zachary's fear proved slightly exaggerated. They lost more cattle, but not as many as he had feared. More importantly, the creek in the high pasture kept flowing, thin but steady. By the time the first snows came in November, the herd had survived, thinner and smaller than before, but alive. Winter brought its own challenges. Wendy had never experienced cold like this, bitter and biting and endless. Snow piled up against the sides of the house. Some mornings, Zachary had to dig their way out just to reach the barn. But the house stayed warm, the cast iron stove throwing heat, and Wendy found she did not mind the forced closeness of winter. She and Zachary spent long evenings by the fire, talking and reading and simply being together. She taught him to play card games her father had shown her. He taught her to whittle, and she made a passable wooden spoon after several failed attempts. On Christmas Eve, with the wind howling outside and snow falling thick and fast, They sat together in front of the fire. Zachary surprised her with a gift, a beautiful shawl in deep blue that he had ordered from a catalog months ago, before she even arrived. "I saw it and thought of you," he explained as she ran her fingers over the soft wool. "Blue like your eyes." "My eyes are gray," she protested, even as she wrapped the shawl around her shoulders. "They are blue when you are happy, gray when you are sad. I have been studying them for months now." He grinned at her surprise. "What did you think I did not notice?" She launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, both of them laughing. "I love it. I love you. Thank you. I have something else for you, too." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "It is not much, but I wanted you to have it." Wendy unfolded the paper carefully. It was a land deed, listing both their names as equal owners of the ranch. She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "You are my partner in everything, Wendy. I wanted it to be official. This place belongs to both of us now." "I do not know what to say." "Say you will stay with me forever. Say you will build this life with me through droughts and snow and whatever else comes our way." "Yes," she whispered, "forever and always." They made love on the rug in front of the fire, slow and tender, and afterward, Wendy lay in her husband's arms and thought about how far she had come. Less than a year ago, she had been terrified and alone, convinced she was not enough for anyone. Now she was loved, cherished, an equal partner in a life she was helping to build. It felt like a miracle. Spring came eventually, as it always did, bringing green grass and rushing streams and the promise of new life. Wendy discovered she was pregnant in April, and Zachary's joy was so pure and overwhelming that it made her cry. He treated her like she was made of spun glass for the first few weeks, until she threatened to hit him with a skillet if he did not let her do her normal work. "The baby will be fine," she insisted. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am not going to break. I know, I just want to keep you both safe. Then trust me to know my own limits." She softened, seeing the real fear beneath his overprotectiveness. "I promise I will be careful, but I need to still be myself, Zachary. I need to still be your partner." He pulled her close, one hand splayed protectively over her still flat belly. "You are right. I am sorry. I am just so happy and so scared all at once." "Me too," she admitted. "But we will figure it out, just like we figure everything else out. Together." The baby was born in early December, in the middle of a snowstorm, with Rosa serving as midwife and Zachary pacing a trench in the main room floor. It was a boy, healthy and loud, with a thick shock of dark hair and his father's gray-blue eyes. They named him James after Zachary's father, and when Zachary held his son for the first time, Wendy saw tears streak down his face. "He is perfect," Zachary whispered, staring down at the squirming bundle in his arms with absolute wonder. "You are perfect. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you for giving me this." "We made him together," she said, exhausted and sore and happier than she had ever been. "He is ours." Being a mother was harder than anything Wendy had ever done. James was colicky and fussy, crying for hours on end despite everything they tried. Wendy walked the floor with him night after night, singing lullabies her mother had taught her, bouncing and swaying until her arms ached. Zachary helped whenever he could, taking turns so she could sleep, but there were nights when she sat in the rocking chair and cried along with her baby, feeling overwhelmed and inadequate all over again. "I do not know what I am doing wrong," she sobbed to Zachary one particularly difficult night. "Why will he not stop crying? What if something is wrong with him? What if I am a terrible mother?" Zachary took the baby from her and handed him to Rosa, who had come over to help. Then he pulled Wendy into his arms and let her cry into his shoulder. "You are not a terrible mother. You are an exhausted mother, which is completely different. Rosa says all babies go through this and it does not last forever. It feels like forever. I know. But we will get through it. You and me and that stubborn little boy who clearly got your determination. Despite her exhaustion, Wendy had to laugh. My determination? You think I do not know where he gets that set to his jaw when he is not happy? That is pure Wendy Stone right there. He kissed her forehead. Go to bed. Rosa and I will handle him for a few hours. You need to rest. But no arguments. Doctor's orders. You are not a doctor. Husband's orders then. Go. She was too tired to argue further, and when she woke 4 hours later to find James sleeping peacefully in his cradle and Zachary dozing in the chair beside him, her heart felt so full it might burst. This was her family. This complicated, messy, beautiful family that she had been so certain she did not deserve. But here they were, and they were hers, and she was going to love them with everything she had. James's colic did eventually pass, and he became a happier baby, quicker to smile and laugh. He grew strong and healthy, crawling before 6 months and pulling himself up to stand shortly after. Wendy discovered that motherhood suited her better once the initial overwhelming exhaustion passed. She loved watching her son discover the world, loved seeing Zachary's face light up when James called him Papa for the first time. By the time James was 2, Wendy was pregnant again, and this time she knew what to expect. She was less frightened, more confident in her ability to handle whatever came. Their daughter was born in August of 1881, an easier birth than James had been, and she was a calmer baby from the start. They named her Sarah, after Wendy's mother, and she had Wendy's brown hair and Zachary's smile. With 2 children, the house felt almost too small, and Zachary spent the winter planning an addition. By the following spring, they had 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. Miguel's oldest son, now 16, came to work for them full-time, and the ranch continued to grow slowly but steadily. The years passed in a rhythm of seasons. Harsh winters and abundant springs, droughts some years, floods in others. But through it all, Wendy and Zachary built their life together, their love deepening with each challenge they overcame. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved helping his father with the cattle. Sarah was wild and fearless, more likely to be found climbing trees than playing with dolls. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Zachary took Wendy riding up into the high pastures, just the 2 of them. They left the children with Rosa and rode for hours until they reached a spot overlooking the ranch. From here, they could see everything they had built: the expanded house, the new barn Zachary had constructed 3 years ago, the cattle grazing peacefully on the hillsides, the smoke rising from Miguel's cabin. "Do you remember when you first got here?" Zachary asked, dismounting and helping Wendy down. "You were so scared." "I was terrified," Wendy admitted, leaning back against him as he wrapped his arms around her waist. "I was convinced I was not enough for this life. For you." And now, she turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to touch his face. There was silver in his hair now, lines around his eyes and mouth, but he was still the most handsome man she had ever seen. More importantly, he was the kindest, the most patient, the most steadfast. "Now I know that we are enough for each other, that we always were. You are everything I want, Wendy, everything I have ever wanted. I need you to know that. Not just my wife or the mother of my children or my partner in the ranch, though you are all those things, but you, just you, are enough all on your own. You told me that the day I arrived in your own way, but I was not ready to believe it then. And now I believe it with all my heart." She kissed him softly. "You are everything I want too, Zachary Stone, my husband, my partner, my love, the man who showed me I was worthy of good things." They made love there on the hillside, under the wide Colorado sky, surrounded by the land they had claimed together, and the life they had built from nothing but hope and determination. Afterward, lying in Zachary's arms with the sun warm on her face, Wendy thought about the scared young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach 10 years ago. She wished she could go back and tell that girl not to be afraid, that she was about to meet a man who would see her worth even when she could not see it herself, that she was about to find a home and a purpose and a love that would sustain her through everything life threw at them. But maybe that girl had needed to be afraid. Maybe she had needed to feel inadequate so she could understand what a gift it was to be loved unconditionally. To be chosen every single day by a man who saw all her flaws and loved her not in spite of them, but as part of the whole package that made her who she was. "What are you thinking about?" Zachary asked, playing with a strand of her hair. "About how lucky I am, how grateful. I am the lucky one." "We are both lucky then. How about that?" He laughed and pulled her closer. "I can live with that." They had 3 more children over the years. Another boy, Daniel, born in 1883, who was quiet like James but with a mischievous streak. Twin girls, Emma and Grace, arrived in 1885, keeping Wendy busier than she had ever imagined possible. The house expanded again to accommodate them all. The ranch prospered, growing from 300 head of cattle to nearly 800 by 1890. James showed an aptitude for working with the cattle that rivaled his father's. By 15, he was working alongside Zachary and Miguel as a full partner. Sarah developed a talent for business, keeping the ranch books with a precision that astounded both her parents. Daniel loved the horses and spent all his free time in the stables, learning everything he could about breeding and training. The twins were still young, but already showing distinct personalities. Emma was thoughtful and bookish, while Grace was bold and adventurous. Wendy sometimes watched her children and marveled at the life they were living. She had given them what she had never had growing up: security, stability, and the unshakable knowledge that they were loved. They would never know the fear she had carried through her childhood and young adulthood. They would never doubt their worth or their place in the world. On a summer evening in 1895, with all 5 children gathered around the dinner table along with Miguel's family and a few other ranch hands who had become like family, Wendy caught Zachary's eye across the crowded room. He was laughing at something young Daniel had said, his face creased with joy, and when his gaze met hers, the love in his eyes was as strong as it had been on their wedding day. Stronger, perhaps, forged and tested by 17 years of partnership. He mouthed, "I love you," across the noise and chaos, and she mouthed it back, her heart so full she could hardly breathe. This was everything she had never dared to dream of when she was young and afraid and alone. This family, this home, this life built on love and trust, and the simple faith that together they could overcome anything. After dinner, after the children were in bed and the house was finally quiet, Wendy and Zachary sat together on the porch swing he had built years ago. The stars were brilliant overhead, the air soft and warm with the promise of summer. "You ever think about that first day?" Wendy asked, her head on his shoulder. "When I got off the stagecoach and was so convinced you would take one look at me and change your mind." "I think about it all the time," Zachary admitted. "I remember seeing you standing there, so brave and so scared all at once, and thinking I was the luckiest man alive. You did not think that. I was too thin and too plain and terrified. You were beautiful. You are beautiful." He turned to kiss her temple. "And every day since then you have proven that my first instinct was right. You were exactly what I needed, what I wanted, what I still want every single day." "I spent so long thinking I was not enough," Wendy said softly. "For my parents after they died, for my aunt, for anyone. And then you came along and just kept insisting I was exactly right. It took me a while to believe you. But you believe me now, with all my heart." She lifted her head to look at him. You know what is funny? I was so worried about being enough for you, but I never once stopped to think whether you would be enough for me. Should I be offended? He was smiling. No, because you are. You are more than enough. You are everything. My partner, my love, my best friend. The father of my children and the builder of this life we share. Some women marry for security or status or obligation. I married for all the right reasons, even if I did not fully understand them at the time. What reasons were those? Hope, possibility, the chance at something real. She cupped his face in her hand. And love. Maybe I did not know it on that first day, but I loved you from the moment you said I was prettier than my photograph and actually meant it. I did mean it. I still do. He covered her hand with his. Wendy Stone, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and those 5 beautiful, chaotic children we made together. This life we built. All of it started because a scared young woman had the courage to answer an advertisement, and a lonely rancher had the sense to write one. Look at us now, Wendy said, gesturing to the ranch spread out before them in the moonlight. This is all ours. We built this together from nothing. From nothing, Zachary agreed. Except hope and hard work and a whole lot of love. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, rocking gently on the swing, listening to the sounds of the night. An owl hooted in the distance. Crickets sang in the grass. Inside the house, one of the twins cried out in her sleep, then settled again without waking fully. What do you think about when you look at all this? Wendy asked eventually. Zachary was quiet for a moment, considering. I think about how close I came to missing it all. If I had been too proud to admit I needed help, if I had not sent that advertisement, if you had not answered it. I could have spent my whole life alone on this ranch, working myself to death and never knowing what I was missing. But you did send it, and I did answer, and here we are, he echoed. 17 years, 5 children, countless challenges, and more happiness than I ever imagined possible. You have any regrets? Wendy asked. Not a single one. She thought about it seriously, knowing he deserved honesty. No regrets. Sometimes I wish I had been less afraid at the beginning, that I had trusted in us sooner, but maybe I needed that fear to fully appreciate what we have now. Maybe we both did. He pulled her closer. I was afraid too, you know. Afraid you would get here and realize you had made a terrible mistake. Afraid I would disappoint you or fail to provide the life I had promised. Afraid I would not be enough. The admission surprised her. You never showed it. I got good at hiding it, but it was there. Every time you struggled with something, I wondered if you were regretting your choice. Every time I came home exhausted and worried about money, I wondered if you were thinking about leaving. I never thought about leaving, not once. I know that now. But it took me a while to trust it completely. He smiled ruefully. We were a pair, were we not? Both convinced we were not enough, both trying so hard to be worthy of each other. When the truth was we were always enough, Wendy finished. We just had to figure that out together. The figuring out was the best part, Zachary said. Getting to know you, falling more in love with you every single day, watching you become the woman you were always meant to be. You helped make me that woman. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. And you made me a better man. Made me believe in something beyond just survival. Gave me a reason to build instead of just maintain. Gave me a family and a purpose and a future worth working toward. They kissed then, slow and sweet and full of 17 years of love and partnership. When they broke apart, Wendy rested her forehead against his. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing something in me worth choosing. For being patient while I learned to see it too. For building this beautiful life with me. Thank you for answering my advertisement. For being brave enough to take a chance on a stranger. For staying even when things got hard. for loving me and our children with your whole heart." He stroked her hair gently. "We make a good team, Wendy Stone." "The best team," she agreed. Inside the house, they could hear movement. One of the children getting up for water, probably Daniel. In a few hours, the sun would rise and they would start another day. There would be cattle to move and meals to cook and children to tend. There would be challenges and worries and work. But there would also be laughter and love, and the deep satisfaction of building something meaningful together. Wendy thought about the scared girl she had been, stepping off that stagecoach with nothing but a battered trunk and a desperate hope for something better. That girl had been so certain she was not enough for this life, for this man, for any of it. She had been wrong. She had always been enough. She had just needed to find the right person to help her see it, and Zachary had been that person. From the first moment, when he had looked at her with those kind gray-blue eyes and told her she was prettier than her photograph, he had been showing her that she was valued, wanted, and loved. Not for what she could do or provide, but for who she was at her core. A woman with courage and determination, and a heart big enough to love a stranger and his dreams. Together, they had built something that would outlast them both. A legacy of love and hard work and faith in each other. Their children would inherit this ranch and the values that had built it. They would know what it meant to truly partner with someone, to face challenges together, to never give up on the people you loved. "What are you smiling about?" Zachary asked, watching her face in the moonlight. "Just thinking about how perfect this all is." Not perfect in the sense that nothing is wrong, but perfect in the sense that it is exactly right for us. "I know what you mean." He kissed her forehead. "Come on, let us get to bed. James wants to ride out early tomorrow to check the northern fence line, and I promised I would go with him." "He is so much like you," Wendy said as they stood and headed inside, arms around each other's waists. "So serious and dedicated. He is like both of us. He has your determination and your kindness. He's going to make a fine rancher someday. Someday far in the future when we are old and gray and ready to let the next generation take over." Zachary laughed. "I am already gray, in case you have not noticed. You are distinguished. It is different." They checked on the children before retiring to their own room, a habit they had maintained since James was born. All 5 were sleeping peacefully, lost in whatever dreams children had. Wendy stood for a moment in the doorway of the room the twins shared, watching their small faces in the moonlight streaming through the window. Her babies, all of them, even the older ones who were growing so fast it made her heart ache. Her greatest achievement, greater than learning to run a ranch or mastering the challenges of this hard country. She had created these beautiful souls with the man she loved, and she had given them the childhood she never had. In their own room, Zachary helped her with the buttons down the back of her dress, his fingers familiar and gentle. They had done this thousands of times, but it still felt intimate, this simple act of helping each other prepare for sleep. They settled into bed and Wendy curled into Zachary's side, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she said into the darkness. "I love you too. Always have, always will." Sleep came easily as it always did when she was in his arms. And if Wendy dreamed, she dreamed of the future, of grandchildren playing in the yard, of James taking over the ranch with the same care and dedication his father had shown, of her daughters finding their own paths, whether on the ranch or beyond it, of growing old with Zachary, silver-haired and content, watching the life they had built continue to flourish and grow. When she had first arrived in Empire City, she had been so afraid of not being enough. But she understood now that she had always been exactly what was needed. Not perfect, not without flaws or fears, but real and present and willing to try. And that had been enough for Zachary. More than enough. It had been everything he wanted, just as he had been everything she wanted, even before she knew enough to want it. A partner who saw her as an equal. A man who valued her thoughts and opinions. A husband who loved her not for what she could provide, but for who she was. A father who adored their children and showed them every day what a good man looked like. The years ahead would bring more challenges, Wendy knew. Nothing was ever perfect or easy for long, but they would face whatever came together, just as they had faced everything else. The droughts and the harsh winters, the sleepless nights with sick children, the financial worries and the backbreaking work. They had survived it all and come out stronger on the other side, their love deeper and more resilient for having been tested. Wendy drifted off to sleep with a smile on her face, secure in the knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. In this house, on this ranch, in this life she had helped build. In the arms of the man who had seen her worth from the very beginning and never let her forget it. She was enough. She had always been enough. And she was finally, completely, beautifully home. The morning sun rose over the Colorado mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, illuminating the ranch that Zachary and Wendy Stone had built together through 17 years of love, labor, and unwavering partnership. Inside the house, 5 children slept peacefully while their parents rested in each other's arms, dreaming of all the tomorrows still to come. Outside, the cattle grazed on the hillsides and the horses stirred in the barn, and the land itself seemed to breathe with the promise of another day, another season, another year of the life they had chosen together. It was not a fairy tale. It was better. It was real and hard-won and absolutely theirs. And it was more than enough. It was everything.